Most churches don't think about risk until something goes wrong. But by the time it becomes visible, it's already too late. I want to welcome you to the Faith Secure podcast, where we are watchful, prayerful, and prepared. I'm Dr. Michael Brown, and today's conversation is going to focus on something every church faces, but few fully understand, and that's risk. Our guest today is Jeffrey Kearnan, a professional who works directly with churches to help them identify, understand, and manage risk in a way that supports their church's mission. He's also an expert witness in this area. I'm delighted to welcome Jeffrey Kearnan to the podcast. How are you, sir?
Dr. Brown, good to see you. Doing well. In between a couple cases right now, so this is a good break.
Okay, welcome respite, huh?
Yes.
All right. You ready to dive right in, sir?
I'll do my best to answer all your hard questions I'm sure you're going to throw at me.
Okay, let's go. Our first segment is going to deal with what churches don't understand about risk. So when you work with churches, what is the biggest misunderstanding that leaders have about risk?
That's a loaded question. So let's get right into it then.
Okay, let's do it.
I would say that they don't understand what risk is. Okay. So the typical definition you'll hear in the security industry is risk is threat times vulnerability times consequence. Okay. And the question I would ask is, how are churches addressing risk? What I've learned is risk is not an event, it's a condition. Okay. If you look at the environment that you're in or take a temperature of the room, it's every single time you unlock the doors on a Sunday morning, even if nothing goes wrong. The church that handles this well, the ones that I never end up talking with about a deposition or during a contract, treat risk as something they manage every day. They build simple systems, they write simple things down, they document, and they give someone ownership. I think that's really important that someone has ownership over this space. Because of that, they're better prepared. The other thing is the conversation has changed in the last 10 years, 15 years to houses of worship. 15 years ago, churches could say, this won't happen to me. Remember how schools used to say that, right?
Now, yeah, absolutely.
But at the Sutherland Springs in 2017 and the West Freeway shooting in 2019, everything shifted. Insurance companies changed their expectations. Courts changed their expectations, and the standards moved. They moved the needle up. It can't happen here mindset isn't realistic anymore. Not because I don't say so, it's because insurance companies and juries say so. So I guess one thing for pastors to take from this is faith and preparation are not opposite. Being watchful doesn't mean you don't trust God. Nehemiah kept building the wall and posted a guard, right? Didn't he have a trowel in one hand and a sword or a knife in the other?
That's right.
So it's the same thing. It's the model. Scripture and the law both say the same thing. Wise people see danger coming and prepare. Unwise people don't look. I think this that's written in Proverbs as well. So I guess the takeaway would be risk isn't something we wait for. It's something we steward.
All right. I like how you said that. So let me ask you this. Do churches tend to only think about risk after an incident, in your opinion?
Well, some do. And others are being more proactive. I have actually seen, I've been encouraged in the last number of years. I've been helping churches pretty steadily now since 2019. I got on as a security consultant for insurance companies who insure churches. So I have contact with hundreds of their clients. So I do see them being more proactive. The question comes after a First Amendment auditor incident, which we've had, and I actually have a case on one right now against the church in California, or a parking lot incident, or the disgruntled volunteer that was respectfully told, we don't need your services anymore, and then they come back and now they're the problem. Or learning about new state legislation on CCW carriers or using armed volunteers. As you know, every state approaches that very differently under their security regulations.
Okay.
After an insurance company query or a claim or a lawsuit, that's usually when people reach out and contact me. And usually there's warning signs that were almost always visible well before the incident. Somebody saw something, somebody had a feeling. It just didn't make it onto paper, and nobody acted on it. So
Okay.
those are the things that more or less that I've experienced.
Okay, so let me ask you, what are some of the more common risk blind spots?
Well, in my consulting work, I see common themes that many churches can identify with. And this is through conducting my vulnerability assessments. Children's ministry and check-in release. That's a big one. I work Sunday school. My wife works Sunday school. We have kids that go to Sunday school.
Okay.
So we see this. This is the highest consequence area in most churches, and it's often run by volunteers with no written procedures and no plan for reuniting families if something goes wrong, like if you have an evacuation, for example, or reunification plan. Parking lots, sidewalks, curbs, like the outer perimeter of the church property. That's where most of the violence occurs, whether it's a shopping mall, a school, or a house of worship. Most of the violent incidents, a majority of them start outside, and you want to keep them outside. So you want to have some type of situational awareness or vigilance. So parking lots, I would say, is a risk factor. Counseling and pastoral care. I don't know if you get the weekly updates on what's going on in the world of churches, but there's a lot of incidents in that area, and pastors have to really be careful when they're stewarding their flock in regard or respect to one-on-one meetings, late hours, no visibility. There's a blind spot on the safety side, and just as importantly, on the false accusation defense side. And that's where they have to really think hard.
Yes.
Marriage counseling alone with someone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's
I've
very
seen
good.
Incidents, and I have a friend that's been involved in incidents with those types of scenarios. Another one I see this comes up during like a vulnerability assessment: key control, access control.
Amen.
Who has access to your facility? There's so many contractors that have elevator codes or door key codes that aren't there anymore. There's former staff, there's former volunteers, former contractors, former spouses of staff, and half of them still have access to your building because no one tracks it. So
yes,
we're starting to get rid of hard keys and go into access control and software-enabled systems, but it's still something that you should be aware of.
Yes.
And then the gap between policy and operational readiness. A, do you have a policy? Who wrote the policy? Was it a copy and paste from the guy across the street? Or was it from the security director before me that can't speak to it anymore? Is it based on best practices? Has it been vetted? Has it been adopted? Has it been shared with your insurance company? Do you train the policy? Do you promulgate the policy and share it with your stakeholders?
Right.
So that's a big gap. And here's another one, and this just came out of my last 2 vulnerability assessments I did, one in Florida, one in California. Outside renters and co-tenants. So if you're running a daycare, a school, if you're doing like a Wednesday night Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, counseling programs operating in your building, they bring their own risk profile under your roof, and that causes you increased risk and liability. So that's something that you should look at in way of contracts. Look at those if you have a contract. One thing to consider that might be off topic, but since you brought it up, since you asked, live stream and video exposure. If you're live streaming, if you're broadcasting, if you're doing your Vacation Bible School, video marketing campaigns, and you're putting children's faces out there, or if you have a prayer request, a lot of that stuff is offline before they go live stream, but some of it isn't. If there's a prayer request on screen that mentions a custody dispute or a medical condition, you're creating exposure most churches haven't really thought through. Of course, I'm being paranoid, right? Because I'm a security consultant, so I'm thinking of anything that can get you in trouble. So,
But listen, what some people call paranoid, I call vigilance. So yes. All right. Thank you for you gave some very good nuggets there,
Yeah.
Jeff. Okay.
Everyone
So
hates
now,
me because they don't want to hear it, but there
oh
it is.
no, that's good stuff. As I said, you mentioned key control. That's one of the things I run into that a lot as I consult churches. Like they'll have no idea how many master keys are out there. They'll
It's
have
not
no
just
idea.
churches; it's most places. I mean, when I was in the sheriff's office, I had a whole wall of keys, and we didn't know where half of them went to. So I mean, when they were made, and it's not abnormal. Okay,
No, I've
it's an
experienced that in the
opportunity.
corporate world too.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's pivot now. We're going to go into the next segment where we're going to deal with risk versus security and talk about what the differences are. So let me ask you, how should church leaders think differently about risk compared to security?
Well, there's a few things, and I think we just talked about the last question with risk and security. But the ministry mindset says we welcome everybody, right? We
Right,
assume the
absolutely.
best, we extend grace, we don't profile people, and all of that is right, and none of it should change. The conflict shows up when the welcoming posture becomes the reason not to plan, not to train, not to document.
Mm-hmm.
Grace and preparation aren't opposites. And I was thinking about this. If you think about a hospital, right?
Right,
A hospital extends grace to every single person who walks through their door, yet they still triage the patient, right?
right.
They still have a code team standing by. A church can do this. If you have the same mindset or concept within a church, they can do the same. In other words, just they should have a plan. They should have a plan and a contingency plan. If somebody comes in that doesn't look right or is
Right.
not acting right, a couple weeks ago in Houston, they had a young man come into a church that had a grievance against the pastor. They recognized him. He was dressed inappropriately. He had a backpack, and they watched him follow the pastor in the bathroom a couple of times. Nobody went inside the bathroom to pretend to wash their hands just to keep an eye on this guy. They waited for the guy to pull the pistol out of his belt before they tackled him. They waited. That's too
Wow.
long.
That's way,
So-
that's late. That's very late.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So let me ask you this. Where do security and risk management overlap?
Okay. That's interesting because security is more of a line level, position. Risk management is more of an executive level, policy level, executive decision. One should support the other. So I would say they overlap in one word. It's called foreseeability, and that's a court legal word that we use on every single one of my cases is foreseeability.
Absolutely.
Okay? The real risk assessment tells you what's reasonably foreseeable. So the other key word is reasonable. Okay, you don't have to get crazy. No such thing as perfection. So
right.
don't get scared. But you have to be. What would a reasonable person if they were in your shoes in the same situation have done? Okay,
Right.
And if you choose to do nothing, the act of omission sometimes is as equal or worse than the act of commission when it comes to preparation. So you look at foreseeability. One thing I would recommend is doing an assessment, a security vulnerability assessment.
Right.
That'll give you your wish list or your shopping list of if you need cameras, if you need security positions, if you need a gate, lighting, access control, all that stuff. And then you can kind of put that on a priority list and you can allocate resources and budget to support that. So every dollar you spend on security should trace back to a written line in your risk assessment.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. What does a risk-informed church look like? Just a synopsized version.
What does a risk-informed church?
Yes, a church that's very risk aware. What does that look like?
Well, I would say they're prepared. It shows that. Okay, so again, in my experience, if I ask a question of a church, somebody in a leadership position, whether it's on the governing board, like an elder or if it's a pastor or an executive. Oftentimes they don't know the answer. They haven't actually thought. They actually haven't thought about the question. So if you're in a risk-informed church, I would say that they have thought about these questions in respect to safety and security and liability, insurance coverage, contingency plans, resources, and then they can answer the question. That to me is a risk-informed church. So having a current written vulnerability assessment.
Okay.
Have a safety team. Now remember, safety and security are two different concepts, right? Security protects people and property. Security may or may not be armed. Security has public interface. Security intervenes is the legal word. If you're intervening in a threat, you're operating in the role and function of a security position as a representative or agent or under the direction of the church organization. Okay? That ties you back to the church. As a safety volunteer, you could be medical, you could be an usher, a greeter, parking lot ministry. You could be doing, working the cameras if you have the cameras, monitoring the weather, assisting with evacuations. Anything, 99% of your daily work is going to be in those positions, and then the 1%. You then defer back to security, and you can be a resource to assist them. But there is a difference. There's a bright line, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I'm dealing with the state of California a lot, and they are making it life difficult for churches in that state compared to other states.
But I'm glad you touched on that, Jeff, because a lot of churches use those terms interchangeably, and they're not. Safety and security are not the same thing, but a lot of places do.
Well, the way the state regulatory authorities, each state has their own, whether it's public safety, law enforcement, or the actual state has their own regulation department that oversees compliance for security guards and security companies. Their phrase would be, if you're gonna play security, we're going to regulate you under our regulatory authority to make sure that you're in compliance with the training, the standards, the licensing, and the insurance under a licensed security vendor. So you can't. There's no such thing as an independent contract security guard that just shows up somewhere and says, "I'm going to be security." They have to be under somebody's license.
Absolutely.
The other thing with risk is background checks. One thing I've learned with background checks, when you hire somebody, you bring on a volunteer, you run them through your typical background check. It's really important that you go outside your state, do all 50 states national background check, because they have been pedophiles that have been released from churches in one state, and then they move to another state. They apply, they run a background check, they come back clean in that state, and then and the other church really didn't do anything about it. They just let them go. And now you just you inherited some pedophile that you don't even know about. So it's important to do background checks across the board and every year redo them, because if you want to check on me in January, I'm clean, and then in February I get in trouble, you're not going to know that unless you run a check on me again the following year. Then it'll pop up. Some of those things to manage risk would be helpful.
That was very good. Very good information. Now let's go to the next segment here. I want to deal with the leadership responsibility and liability. Okay. So what responsibility do church leaders carry when it comes to risk?
That's the $1 million question, man, because that's the audience that I need to speak with. And that's the hardest audience to get them to listen. So I'm going to just be real with this.
Please.
Okay, a church, for some reason, churches think that they're exempt from everything. That's not true. A church, a house, I'm just going to say a house of worship, whether it's a synagogue, a temple, or a church. Right. It's designated as a nonprofit organization, an NGO, non-governmental organization. Okay. It's still a business. Okay. If they are generating an economy through donations, tithes, offerings, they're generating, it's a business. Okay. They have an EIN number, and it's a business. So they're looked upon the same. However, when you invite people into your onto your property, into your sanctuary to worship, there's an expectation from the person under two things. One, the OSHA General Duty Clause for employer-employee relationships. You have to provide a safe environment free of risk, free that will cause harm or injury, and you have to notify them of any hazards. Okay, that's OSHA. And then there's duty of care doctrine.
Absolutely.
And the highest duty of care that an invitee, someone who's coming on your property, has is when you invite them in. So the church has a higher duty of care expectation to an invitee, someone coming in, and there's an expectation that they are free to worship without being harmed, injured, or killed during that experience. And if they are, then they have to defend themselves against a negligence claim. So that's the first thing that leadership should know about, is that the highest duty of care a property owner can owe a person. And then everything comes from there, right? And that's kind of what I specialize in. I do all these negligence cases, premises liability, duty of care. But the misconception I see is the ministerial exception. They say, well, okay, but we're covered. We have immunity. The ministerial exception, or the board of director exception, is for employment claims against the religious organizations. It does not shield a church from negligent security, negligent supervision, or premises liability. Right. Pastors hear this exception and they think it's a force field, and it is not.
It is not.
And ignorance of a standard is not a defense. Okay.
Right.
That's called deliberate indifference. I hear some churches say, well, I'm not going to have a policy because if I don't have a policy, then they can't hold me to it. Okay, well, that's worse than negligence.
Right.
So it comes down to a standard of care. What's your standard of care? Everyone has one, whether it's in writing or whether it's in culture and practice. And that standard of care is going to be held against what the reasonable standard of care is based off of the industry standard, best practices, and regulatory authority. Right. And that's what you have to answer to. So it would behoove them to have a good policy, procedure, and training plan to support it.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. What happens when risk is ignored?
Well, a few things. It's all potential, right? Some people may not experience it, but the longer time goes on, the higher the percentages that it will occur. An incident happens that was foreseeable. The response is a mess because nobody had a plan. Then you're looking at a civil claim gets filed against you. And during discovery, the absence of assessments, policies, training records, board minutes, because your board minutes will get pulled in discovery.
Absolutely.
That absence becomes the plaintiff's case. And I love working for the plaintiff because it's a lot easier than working for the defense. Right. Third, even if the litigation eventually settles, the reputational and congregational damage sticks. People don't forget that the church they trusted with their kids did not have a plan. Here's the other thing in regards, and I don't know if you're going to ask me this, so I don't want to get ahead of myself, but
no, by all means, feel free.
So when it comes to insurance companies, okay, I work with all the insurance companies, and I have synagogues and churches calling me with questions about coverage. Hey, am I covered if I do this? And I say, call your insurance company. I'm just a security guy. And the insurance, they say, well, our insurance company told us to call you. So then I call the insurance company and I talk to, so you have the claims process. If you get a claim, if you have like a twisted ankle or anxiety attack because they got bottlenecked on an evacuation, you might have 7 claims, or you could have an injury or worse, right? So you get a claim. So your goal is to make sure that your insurance company approves the claim.
Right.
Because if they approve the claim, they assign an attorney to defend the claim, and then they pay out on the settlement or judgment against you, and then you're clear. Okay.
Right.
If they don't, if they deny the claim, now you're on the hook to pay for a super expensive attorney. And it's more than just the attorney fees. They have to pay expert witness fees. They have to pay paralegal fees, all kinds of stuff. And you're on the hook for the settlement and judgments, which could cause a bankruptcy. So you want to be bulletproof and make sure that they approve your claim. So what they need, this is a partnership. They need your help to support this claim. So they need a best practice vetted policy or procedure, trained to the policy and procedure, and document the training and keep the documentation for 5 years, because in civil litigation, they can go back 5 years to file a claim. And that's when I get the case. I just finished up a bunch of COVID cases because they were 5 years. So people won't remember who did what 5 years ago. That's why you have to document this stuff.
Right.
So
that's beautiful.
That's what I can share with you.
That's beautiful. Okay. So now we're going to pivot here, Jeff. I'm going to give you a scenario. Okay. And then ask you some questions based on the scenario. And the scenario is going to deal with the overlooked risk. Okay. So a church operates with open access, as most of them do, minimal oversight, and no formal risk assessment. Leadership believes their culture and community relationships are sufficient to maintain safety. So now, given that scenario, what stands out to you?
Well, that's I know you didn't make that up, because that's a common it's a common story. What stands out to me is this: that the church has confused a good feeling with a good plan. Okay. Now we understand culture and relationships are real. Most churches know each other, unless it's a big church. Then it's hard to know everybody. They protect people. I'm not. I want to be careful how I say this.
Okay.
Okay. Think about it this way: a real plan works the same way on a Sunday when the pastor is there, and on a Wednesday when he's not. It works when the regulars are in the building and when a stranger walks in. Okay. Culture is what the regulars do on a good day. That's not nothing. What I'm trying to say is, if everything is working with or without the leadership, then you have a good plan. If you have no formal risk assessment, or no risk assessment or threat or vulnerability assessment, then you don't know what you're looking at. Remember what Donald Rumsfeld said about the WMDs in Iraq? He said, "We don't know what we don't know." Right? That kind of stuck with me. It's the same concept. So they have to start somewhere, and they should do an assessment, a physical walk around the building, just looking for access control and lighting and locks and your basic vulnerabilities. And, do you have surveillance and cameras? What's the retention on those cameras? That kind of stuff. But then behavioral threat assessment on the people who arrive, whether it's children, whether it's youth that are struggling, or whether it's behaviors that seem abnormal, and how are you monitoring that? Because that could be a risk in itself if you overlook that. So a friendly culture is not a safety plan. A written practice plan is something that you can count on. So that's kind of where I come in with the plans that I write to help these churches.
Absolutely. And I know you've touched this, but it bears reiteration. What are the consequences if nothing changes based on that scenario?
Well, I guess it would be, if they experienced an incident, then now they're in the defense mode, right? They have to defend why they did or did not do something. And they're going to have to produce documents to support that defense. Absent any documentation, it comes back to, what was your standard of care?
Right.
And if you had a very low bar standard of care, and that's measured against what the reasonable person would expect the standard of care to be based off of best practices, regulatory authorities, and all the other stuff. Right. And if you didn't at least meet that standard, then you're going to be viewed upon as having a negligent operation.
Okay.
Unsafe environment.
Okay. So now, having said that, Jeff, and again, some of the things that you're saying are so important, they bear reiteration. So now let's do a practical takeaway. What are 3 immediate steps that churches can take to better manage risk?
Well, I think I said it earlier. A vulnerability assessment, I think, is really important, because it's shared with the stakeholders, right? Not just the pastor. You want the elders to look at that and kind of chew on it and argue about it. But it identifies your vulnerabilities. And it also builds a priority list of what you can find or what are easy fixes. So I would commission a written vulnerability assessment by a qualified independent professional that actually knows how to do one. because I'll write one. It's a comprehensive 100-page report, and it breaks down every threat, every risk, every vulnerability, whether it's weather related, human cause related, or technological. And then it kind of gives them a whole plan. The second thing is stand up a safety and security team with written roles, written authority, and documented training. And put risk on the board's standing agenda. Fund it and document the decisions. And the reason why I say that, I was an elder at a church, and we didn't have that. We didn't have a safety or risk component or concept. If you have that on the agenda, somebody that reports up to the board, it just gives an update on things, what's happening in the world, what's happening in our community, what's happening in our church. Okay. What are we doing if A, B, and C were to happen? Have we talked about those scenarios?
Right.
What's the rules of engagement? Every church leader is going to have a different set of rules. Some are going to be hands-on, some are going to be hands-off. So, and what resources are available to support those?
And I like what you said about having a standing risk segment at the board meetings, because it keeps it in the forefront of their mind. It's not just we deal with risk when something happens or whatever, it keeps it at the forefront, and it's something that's always talked about. So I like that. So Jeff, let's go to the closing segment here, and dealing with, from risk awareness, we're going to go to preparedness. Now, again, reiteration is the key here. You've mentioned it before, but now a pastor or a church leader that's watching this stream right now, what is the first step they should take after listening to this conversation? Step one.
If they already have a go-to person, whether it's a staff member or a volunteer that's in this role of safety and security, I would take the time to meet with them. There's so many volunteers who I speak with that have no opportunity to meet with the church leadership. They have all these great ideas and concepts, but they don't have the positional authority or the juice card to make the decision. I would want to hear from the line level people, the eyes and ears that are out there, because the pastor, his viewpoint is going to be very different than somebody that's manning the door or in the parking lot, right? And then simply, pick up a notebook and do a physical walk around yourself and act and do this. We used to call it red teaming in the military. Act as an adversary. If I was going to break into this place, what opportunities do I have? Look at your windows, your doors, your locks. Look at the lights. Is it dark? Where can I hide? And then if I were to come inside, where are the bottlenecks? Where are evacuation zones? Are they clearly marked? Are the egress is unobstructed? Do we have American with Disabilities Act vulnerable population ramps? We did an evacuation. We sent the wheelchairs out the wrong door, and they had stairs, and the other one had the ramp. So maybe put a sign up so it kind of helps you during a crisis. Look at just look at some of these ground balls, and then you can actually have okay, now I have an initial assessment based off of what they have, and then talk to people and ask them what their opinions are. Where do they see the threats and vulnerabilities? Is it in communication? Is it in decision making? Is it lack of teamwork? Is it lack of leadership? Who do I go to if something were to happen? The lack of first responders having knowledge of if you had a 911 call and the cops get there, where do they park in the parking lot? Which door do you want them to go in? Right. Just basic familiarization stuff that I think would be really helpful for them.
So and Jeff, that makes perfect sense. But how can you tell churches to move forward without them feeling overwhelmed? How do you break this risk thing down into bite-sized pieces?
That's a great question, because I write these comprehensive plans, and their heads explode when they see them. So I also write these field operation guides that complement or supplement the big plans. The big plan is at the administrative level. The field operations guide, the streamlined condensed plan, that's at the line level, ready and quick implementation level. So I would say you want to phase it, right? You just take the big chunks that the need to haves versus the nice to haves. Right. I think you need to know how to do an evacuation. That's a fire code, right? Everyone knows how to do a fire drill. If you can do a fire drill evacuation, and you know which doors to go out and who's directing you out those doors, and where your evacuation assembly areas are specific to Sunday school children. They may be going somewhere different than the congregation is, and the reunification plans, that should be a basic, right? And
Right.
then, so I would phase it out, say, okay, let's just get the big stuff that we should be doing, that we're expected to be doing, and then we can do like a 2 to 3 year implementation as we add resources, as we add training, and as we add more procedures and guidelines to assist us. So I would phase it, I guess, would be the answer to your question.
Okay. Oh, that's very good. Now, here's the last question, Jeff. Okay. What encouragement would you give hesitant leaders?
Encouragement, huh?
Encouragement. What encouragement?
I gave them
you spoke to the being overwhelmed.
Yeah, they're already mad at me for everything I just told you. So I would say you're not starting from zero. Every church does some of this already. You already have your apparatus in place, right? You have your welcoming teams, you have your ushers, you have your greeters, you have your children's ministry. That hopefully you have a check-in process that you're using. You should have some type of building access controls. Maybe you don't need all your doors open all the time. When service starts, close your side doors and redirect people to a couple of main doors that you can actually monitor. And then the cost of starting small is always cheaper than starting after an incident. Okay.
Yes, it is.
Amen. And perfection is not the standard. Reasonable is the standard. If you're reasonable, if you're documenting, if you're consistent, that'll protect your church. 1 hour of an attorney's time is going to be $1,000. Okay. And then claims go up into, millions. So I would just invest a little, and don't look at risk and security and safety as a burden. Look at it as an investment, because that's what it is. Invest in your volunteers, value your volunteers, and show them that you support your volunteers, and invest in your congregation and the safety so that you can thrive and you can continue to grow.
That's very well said, Jeff. Stick by 1 second. I just want to close real quick. If you want more information on this or any other church security or risk-related topic that you've heard on these podcasts, please reach out to us at mdbconsultingagency.com/faithsecure. And also a solicitation for those watching this stream. If there's a person in the church security or risk field that you would like for me to have on the podcast, please email me the name of that individual at Dr. Mike, that's Dr. Mike, at mdbconsultingagency.com. Jeff, I want to thank you. You dropped a lot of wisdom and nuggets on us, and I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
All right. Until next week, I want everyone to remember to be watchful, prayerful, and prepared. God bless.